According to Born for Liberty by Sarah M. Evans, the striking achievements of women within the New Deal were rapidly erased from memory because women found it difficult to manage multiple roles and assert the importance of women's needs without the existence of a strong movement towards women's suffrage. And with the rapidly changing gender roles and understanding of sexuality, women were constantly pushed aside. But women like Dorothy Day helped change the American attitudes towards gender and sexuality during the New Deal through her reflections, either publicly in newspaper articles, / her book, or privately through her diary. Dorothy Day was born in Brooklyn, New York on November 8, 1897, to Grace and John Day. When Day entered the University of Illinois, she became interested in supporting radical social causes like the female right to vote, which only grew when she found her passion for journalism in none other than New York City in 1916. She wrote for a newspaper called New York Call and used her journalist position to write articles empowering female protest movements. On February 21, 1917, Day published an article titled "The Women on the East Side Are Going on an Enforced Hunger Strike." Day highlights direct quotes from the protesting women who are frustrated about the high prices of grocery items which cause many families to go hungry. With incredibly low wages from the husbands, wives struggle to feed the family with such high prices. Since the women themselves could not work, they sent a committee of 4 to present the mayor with their demands, as the women refused to buy any potatoes or onions or meats. Day emphasizes their motherhood and helplessness, because they themselves could not go into the workforce. Her article shows the politicization of domesticity because the kitchen and food was the female domain. Using their position in the kitchen, women pushed themselves into the political sphere. Articles like Day's only served to continue to shed the spotlight on them. That same year, Day herself decided to get involved with a picket for women's suffrage. She and a group of other women marched right up to the gates of the White House and were harassed by groups of men before being arrested. They did it twice more, but on the third time, rather than being released on bail, they were sent to an overcrowded central station. Day and 34 other women were sentenced to varying amounts of time in Occoquan workhouse, which caused them to start a hunger strike. She writes about her experience in her famous autobiography, The Long Loneliness, which she published in 1952. As they were dragged to their prison cell, Day recalls being thrown to the floor. When another prisoner tried to come to my rescue, we found ourselves in the midst of a milling crowd of guards, being pummeled and pushed and kicked and dragged, so that we were scarcely conscious, in the shock of what was taking place. Day and the women were arrested after peacefully protesting in front of the White House, contrary to the men who were throwing small stones at them. Day was subjected as a witness to a lot of violence in the prison for simply standing on the sidewalk and demanding the right to vote. She was a perfect example of women pushing back against the restrictions to stay out of the public sphere. In 1919, Dorothy got an abortion after she got pregnant, and her boyfriend threatened to leave her if she did not. She got a back alley abortion, and even then her boyfriend left. Despite her abortion and feminism, she quietly opposed divorce, birth control, and abortion, especially after she converted to Catholicism in 1927. Her opposition of abortion and birth control were very private. When she was working for the Catholic Worker newspaper, she wrote to the archdiocesan censor when the newspaper was suspect for its editorial line. She assured them that the Catholic Work supports all that is being done to give free or reasonably cheap care to mothers in prenatal and postnatal care. But she also insisted that we are not going into the subject of birth control at all. In 1937, she wrote for the Commonweal newspaper, "We have knowledge of salvation through forgiveness of our sins. I hope your readers can read between the lines from the above and recognize what my positions on birth control and abortion are." Day is never frank about her position on birth control or abortion, and although she doesn't cry for its ban, she doesn't support its existence either, which only moves to support the Catholic Church's stance on the evils of abortion. You remember the Catholic Worker newspaper I mentioned before? Day was actually a co-founder with Peter Morin. She continued to promote female voices in the Catholic Worker by publishing radical Christian women's work. as she had done previously when she had a different journalist job. It was when she was involved with a Catholic worker that Dorothy was forced to think about the sexual revolution happening around her. She writes in her diary, "I must set down my own insights which came to me after prayer. I only go into this because 2 of our friends have now written and spoken to me of their acceptance of lesbianism." This is the start of Day dealing with the question of homosexuality. Her dealing was a lot more personal and private. She believed that homosexuality, like heterosexuality, affected people's relationships with God. And only when her friends came to tell her that they had accepted lesbianism did she actually sit down to think about it. Day wrote about her 2 experiences with homoromantic love in an effort to try and connect with her 2 friends. At this point, she was an 80-year-old woman writing about how when she was 15, she had fallen in love with another girl in her class. She didn't know her name or make any advances, but she wrote about her infatuation with her. Day had an interesting relationship with sexuality, especially because of her religion. And although she never explicitly spoke out against the LGBTQ community, she also never even spoke in support of it. The only real indication we get is from this private diary entry, in which it appears that she learned to accept homosexuality, at least privately. Thank you for listening to my presentation on Dorothy Day. I hope that you learned something new about her overall contribution to the change in American attitude towards gender and sexuality. Thank you.